Welcome friends to another 40k video. Today we're delving into the origins of the Ordo Hereticus, one of the three major ordos of the Inquisition. The origins tie back to the Ecclesiarchy, so we'll be going over some Ecclesiarchy lore as well, some history, some major events and what they are. So first let's define what the Inquisition is. It's made up of three major ordos, each of which specializes in combating specific threats to the Imperium and the prosperity of mankind. To start with, the one we're looking at today, Ordo Hereticus, specializes in the investigation, pursuit and destruction of the witch, the heretic and the mutant. The other two in brief, Malleus, deals with the discovery, defense and destruction of demons, and Xenos, self-explanatory, deals with hunting down and destruction of alien threats. So let's look back into the history of the Ecclesiarchy first to see when and why the Ordo Hereticus were formed. Most of this will be taken directly from the Witch Hunters Codex. So the Ecclesiarchy has provided guidance to the servants of the Emperor for nearly 10,000 years, through some very, very dark times. He's become worshipped by this point. This began when he fell almost into death at the hands of the Warmaster Horus. The Warmaster treachery had almost destroyed the Imperium, which was left teetering on the brink of anarchy. In these bleak times, spiritual guidance was needed, as ever before, and as news of the Emperor's supreme sacrifice spread, adoration and worship swept through the Imperium. Visionaries appeared in many worlds, preaching that the Emperor still watched over the faithful, and these divinely inspired individuals quickly attracted hordes of disciples. Soon these cults were spreading through the galaxy, the strongest growing and prospering, subsuming or eradicating the smaller ones, until one particular sect of emperors' worship grew to dominate them, the Temple of the Saviour Emperor. By the end of the 32nd century, almost two-thirds of the Imperium was united by his worship. The Astartes and the Mechanicus were exempt from this, but the Emperor at this point is recognized as the official religion of the Imperium and given the title of the Adeptus Ministorum, or Ecclesiarchy. The power at this point continued to grow, to the point where its seat on the Council of High Lords was made permanent, and from here, with the backing of the Adeptus Terra, the tendrils of the influence of the Ministorum, the Ecclesiarchy spread. Unchallenged in spiritual matters, the Ministorum took steps to ensure that its control was spread to all facets of imperial life, even to the extent that the High Lords of Terra would take their lead from the head of the Ministorum, the Ecclesiarch, believing him to be the voice of the Emperor, a belief that the Ministorum did nothing to disprove. Soon the Ministorum was the de facto master of the Imperium, dictating imperial law, mustering armies, and deciding which threats to meet with force. But as the grip of the Ministorum tightened, the secular power of the Administratum fought against the absolute control, and thus began a power struggle that has lasted until the 41st millennium. Into this maelstrom of conflict stepped Goji Vandaya, the 361st High Lord of the Administratum. We now enter the Age of Apostasy, which begins around M36. Vandaya broke the stranglehold of the Ecclesiarchy in several bold moves, overtly manipulating the Ministorum through assassination and brute force. He took control of the Ministorum in what can be described as a military coup and assumed the dual role of Ecclesiarch and High Lord of the Administratum, driving the Imperium into the bloodiest period since the Horus Heresy, the Age of Apostasy, and the Reign of Blood. Vandaya was a paranoid megalomaniac and saw plots and treachery everywhere. His mind a twisted labyrinth of suspicion and delusions. Countless millions died in the Reign of Blood, and entire worlds were destroyed by the madness. Early in his blood-soaked reign, Vandaya discovered an all-female order of warriors on the world of San Lior, known as the Daughters of the Emperor, which he renamed the Brides of the Emperor, and these became his personal bodyguards. The Reign of Blood was to continue for another 7 decades, with millions more burning in the fires of Vandaya's insanity. As the years dragged on, Vandaya grew increasingly violent, and his mood swings even more unpredictable. He developed a morbid fear of light and would often wander the darkened passages of the imperial palace. At one point he received a message that on the world of Dimamar, a sect known as the Confederation of Light had emerged and denounced Vandaya as a traitor. Led by a man known as Sebastian Thor, the Confederation of Light spread its message to a brutalized people, only too ready to throw off the yoke of oppression, and soon system after system joined Sebastian Thor. A massive war fleet consisting of the majority of the Ministorum's armed forces was assembled to crush the rebellious systems, but shortly after its departure, it was destroyed by a terrifyingly powerful warp storm in an area of space still known and feared as the Storm of the Emperor's Wrath. With much of the Ministorum's forces destroyed, whole swaths of the Imperium erupted in rebellion, with scores of systems declaring for Thor and the Confederation of Light. A narrator of supreme skill, Sebastian Thor swayed millions to his cause and turned the tide against Vandaya. As Thor's Crusade smashed aside those who remained loyal to the Ecclesiarchy. The Space Marines and the Adeptus Mechanicus were finally able to join forces with Thor and close on Terror. Once more, the Imperial Palace came under attack, though this time from the forces loyal to the Emperor. For months, the walls of the palace withstood every assault, until at last the Adeptus Custodes, the Praetorian Guard of the Emperor himself, sought out Alicia Dominica, the leader of the brides of the Emperor, and her most trusted companions. The Custodes took them before the Emperor, though what occurred there remains unknown. When they emerged from the bowels of the palace, they renounced the name of brides in favour of their original title of daughters of the Emperor, and marched with barely controlled fury to Vandire's audience chamber. They found him in the midst of yet another bloody tirade, and pausing only to condemn him for his crimes against the Emperor, Alicia Dominica cut the head from the traitor's shoulders, and the reign of blood was over. It is said that she said to Vandire, "You have committed the ultimate heresy. Not only have you turned your back on the Emperor and stepped from his light, you have profaned his name and almost destroyed everything he has striven to build. You have perverted and twisted the path he had laid for mankind to tread. As your own decrees have stated, there can be no mercy for such a crime, no pity for such a criminal. I renounce your lordship. You walk in the darkness and cannot be allowed to live. Your sentence has been long overdue, and it is now time for your death." Then we move into the period known as the Reformation. Sebastian Thor eventually ascended to become Ecclesiarch, and the Ministerium was to change forever. He formed the Synod Ministra on Ophelia 7, an act designed to break up the power of the Ecclesiarchy, perhaps in some ways reminiscent of how Rebuti broke down the legions into smaller chapters, following Horus claiming so much power. No longer would one man have total power over the Ministerium and become another Vandire. Great changes were gradually implemented to bring the Ministerium back to its original inception, and more importantly, the decree passive was issued in 288.M36. This historic act forbade the Ministerium from raising men under arms, and Thor disbanded the armies and fleet that had served Vandire, incorporating the daughters of the Emperor into the military hierarchy and renaming them the Ordo Militant of the Adepta Sororitas, the Sisters of Battle. Though they sat uncomfortably with the newly reinstated High Lords of Terror, they could not oppose Thor, and his insistence that they would regulate the Ecclesiarchy as much as enforce its will reassured many of his doubters. Perhaps the most important part to come into existence following the Age of Apostasy was not at Thor's instigation at all, but at the behest of the secret masters of the Emperor's holy orders of the Inquisition. This new organization was the Ordo Hereticus. This next section from the Witch Hunter Codex dubbed the Rise of the Witch Hunters. The Ordo Hereticus arose from the ashes of the Age of Apostasy, formed to guard against the enemy within, while the Inquisition monitors every aspect of the Imperium as a whole. The prime concern of the Ordo Hereticus, or the Witch Hunters, as its members are more commonly known, is the apprehension and judgment of the rogue psyker, the heretic and the mutant. Given that the stated purpose of the Adeptus Sororitas and the newly formed Ordo Hereticus meshed so seamlessly, it did not take long for the duties and hierarchy of both organizations to become part of the same holy purpose. Though the Adeptus Sororitas would forever remain the Ecclesiarchy's primary armed force, they would also become the chamber militant of the Ordo Hereticus, a shadowy breach within the secrecy surrounding the Ordo. One that is already swathed in secrecy. The Ordo Hereticus is the guardian of humanity, the watcher at the gates which protects humanity as much from its own weaknesses as any threat from without. The witch hunters of the Ordo Hereticus are sinister, feared individuals, pale from long days spent in the chambers of Inquisition fortresses or weeks spent poring over ancient texts that speak of the heretic and his machinations. The arrival of an Ordo Hereticus Inquisitor is met with as much trepidation as awe, since none know where their gimlet gaze may land, upon whom their suspicions might fall. In addition to monitoring the Ecclesiarchy, ensuring that walls of faith do not exceed their mandate, or that many cardinals do not amass more power than is deemed appropriate, the Ordo Hereticus keeps a close eye on many other imperial organizations. It looks at the threats from within, the Adeptus Arbites, the Space Marines, and also fellow members of the Inquisition. They monitor doctrinal and physical purity, and no one is beyond their jurisdiction. It is a brave man who crosses the path of a witch hunter, simply by opposing a member of the Ordo Hereticus. An individual may be damned and declared heretic and extremis diabolus.